25 seconds and counting. We're still proceeding. T-minus 20. 17 seconds. Swing arm back. We have guidance internal. 10, 9. Two, 1, 0. All engines running. Commit. Liftoff. We have liftoff. 11:22 a.m.
So the Doomsday Challenge came about a couple of months ago from discussions with my Insta and YouTube buddies Craftyric and N-Scale Dystopia. The premise is you roll 1 dice for an existential threat and 1 dice for a method of escape from that threat. And then you build a diorama about it. There were 16 completed builds in this challenge, and I will show pics of all the builds. So I began the project with a couple of concept sketches of what I had in mind. I established the kind of 1950s science fiction movie aesthetic, the angled launch pad, and the scale. I also drew sketches of the launch towers. Step 1 of the process was to take apart a printer for parts to use in the build. And in doing so, I stained my hands so badly that it took 3 days to come clean. The core launch pad I built around a 1/35 scale artillery kit set, which I glued to a wooden base. I built a ramp out of balsa wood and styrene and glued on various plastic jars and containers to act as fuel tanks. I added greaves to the tower made from printer parts and put this kind of skeleton frame from styrene and balsa wood. I glued further printer parts inside the gun housing. The launch tower for people to climb up on the rocket was made from bamboo skewers, balsa wood and styrene card. I used printer cogs to build and maintain the accessway that would rotate in and out to allow workers to access the rocket. So this is a sketch of the rocket, which was built from 2 shampoo bottles and a Powerade bottle, cardboard and balsa wood. I then cut the wooden dowel into angled lengths and kinda had a little factory going, making and smoothing lengths of dowel, which I then glued onto the rocket. I found these rivets in the sewing section of my local craft store and drilled holes in the Powerade bottle, glued in the rivets as portholes and filled them with milliput like this. I then painted with undercoat and pre-shaded with grey and black using my airbrush. I then masked off the rocket to cover everything that was not a metal finish, but when I took off the tape it stripped the pre-shading off. So I used the airbrush to create various undershading tones of orange and then a final coat in bright orange. The tower I airbrushed aluminium and copper tones, then employed the night shift method of leaving oil paint on cardboard so the linseed oil would drain out, and then using small amounts of isopropyl alcohol. This is the method I painted in oil paint to get the true metallic finish. If you try this method, you must spray a matte varnish to protect the undercoat acrylic paint. To make the snow in the diorama, I mixed up plaster of Paris with white acrylic paint and Mod Podge. I mixed it all up and I dabbed it all over the base, the exposed metal surfaces and various little corners snow would likely pull. Then I later painted the snow white. I then went back and used oil washes to further weather the fuel tanks, and that was it for the painting. For the composition I leaned heavily on one of my favourite paintings, Hunters in Winter by Peter Bruegel. And this I planned from the very beginning. His people were dressed in black, my people were dressed in black. This was his colour palette, here is my colour palette. So the biggest scenery is made from a large sheet of styrofoam from the packaging of a washing machine. And then I sculpted air dry clay over the styrofoam to make foothills, mountains and a volcano. And I covered the whole thing with my snow mix. For the volcano smoke cloud I covered a wire tree with cotton wool, and then PVA glue, and I airbrushed the smoke and the volcano. Then I headed into the shed to take photographs and play with a toy I've had for a lot of years, my smoke machine. Now it is time to look at all the entries, starting with Craftyric, who made a gyrocopter in classic Crafty style. How good is that lava? He's a great guy, a great modeler, and embodies the Doomsday spirit. Then we have N-Scale Dystopia. His attention to detail is just amazing. The premise here is that the zombies drop in on the underwater shelter using barrels. He used no resin in the build, and the underwater rock formations were made using wood chips for a barbecue smoker. Next we have Nimo, who I believe coined the term windpunk to describe a one-of-a-kind railway carriage pushed away by the wind. Beautifully photographed. I particularly like the corrugated iron on the sides of this carriage. Then we have Lidscapes. This is an interesting piece that is a combination of 2D and 3D elements with a space shuttle escaping nuclear war. Easily imagine this hanging on the wall of some hip downtown gallery. Nabascrewn went an entirely different route using plastic sprue and Lego in this friendly and colourful depiction of lava-induced mass devastation. Great build. Mountaingoatmodels is a super talented model maker with a meticulous eye for detail. This build depicts a zombie smashing train. The fan on the front shreds zombies in its path. This is a running model train. Check out his video on his Insta page. We all liked this idea from Jay Boccchio. What better way to escape from an alien than in a bumper car? This was the first time she used an airbrush in model making. The alien is hand sculpted, and the build turned out tremendously well. Oak Hill Studios went to town on this build. Check out his work on Instagram and YouTube. He is a really talented model maker worth serious attention. This colourful and distinctive take on an alien landscape and the creatures that live there shows a model maker with high levels of control and a clear creative vision. Tony Scale took this build to the next level. It is hard to believe that this degree of detail is possible at this tiny scale. The lightning is a practical effect made using a tiny light bulb and stretched transparent sprue of a model kit. Just fabulous work all around. J Burns 272 made this 2-level diorama where an asteroid in the ocean has killed life, but people live in the bottom of the ocean, waiting until it is safe. Check out the reel on his Insta page that explains it all. A Boondock bight made this ambitious build with this kind of airship copter and a firefight between humans and zombies. I just love the water tank. It looks super cool. Absolutely awesome attention to detail in a big build. TRC Studio made this incredible flying space rig. What a great idea. Beautifully built, painted and weathered. Tremendous idea and nailed the execution. The base is a lovely presentation touch. So very well done. dm.jime made this beautiful zombie hunting quadcopter. I love the composition. The painting is so beautifully finished and the backdrop was hand airbrushed. This is the work of the highest order, so dramatic, you just can't look away. JSK Miniatures made this incredible diorama depicting an astronaut fighting off zombies in space. I really love the composition and the painting and the framing of finished photographs like it is from a Hollywood film. Tremendous work. The zombies in particular are very disturbing and superbly crafted. Alchemicalabomination made this hugely impressive diorama. The scuba diver was hand sculpted using epoxy putty. The scuba tank was made of flat metal sheets and formed with metalworking techniques. It depicts the underwater atomic blast, and the whole thing is encased in a resin block, which after these photos he polished to a hard edge glass finish. Look on Insta for photos. These are still photographs for me, Retro Roboland. I really enjoyed this build and it is the best model that I've made so far. I also really enjoyed the interaction with the other modelers we had going online, where maybe half the chat had no correlation with modelling at all. Given the success of the Doomsday, there will be a future challenge in collaboration with Craftyric and N-Scale Dystopia at some point in the not too distant future. This, though, is the end of the shed. I'll be taking a break for a couple of months from YouTube and Instagram, posting while my family move house. But it will be the start of a new studio. Stay tuned. I'm also going to change the focus of the channel going forward. Again, stay tuned. Thanks for watching. I'll be back with new videos in a little while.